Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. And we begin in Venezuela, where President Nicolás Maduro has addressed the nation about latest attack on the country's electrical system as power is progressively restored throughout the country.
The electrical sabotage was performed to deprive the country of electricity and water and to put people in a state of desperation and violence, a situation promoted by small violent groups.
President Maduro also said that the national deployment of the Bolivarian armed forces together with the people will ensure the security of the electrical stations and the country's civic military union.
As General Padrino Lopez and the Almirante Ceballos has informed, the Bolivarian National Armed Force is deployed, guaranteeing the protection of the electrical stations, the water tributaries and substations of the country. At the same time, the Bolivarian National Armed Force is guaranteeing security and peace nationwide. If in the middle of this situation imperialists attempt to take action against us, our Bolivarian National Armed Force are willing to continue battling for our people in my command next to the people in civic and military union that will guarantee the territorial, maritime, aerial and sovereignty of the country.
The president also referred to the 30-day plan to recover and stabilize the electrical system. The president announced the appointment of a new minister for electricity and to be president of the electrical corporation Corpoelec.
The electrical engineer Igor Gavidia assumes the Ministry of Electrical Power from today as a new minister in charge, and he also assumes the presidency of the Corpoelec Corporation for the new stage of definitive defeat of the electrical war and the stabilization of the entire electrical system of the country. From today, the electrical engineer Igor Gavidia León takes over these new responsibilities with 25 years of experience in the sector.
And the Supreme Court of Justice in Venezuela has asked the National Constituent Assembly to remove the immunity of opposition leader Juan Guaido. The president of the Supreme Court said this decision comes after Guaido violated his traveling ban in February. The court also ratified the decision to freeze his bank accounts and ban him from selling his properties. The decision will now be submitted to the president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello. And efforts are ongoing in Venezuela to restore electrical power after a number of foreign attacks left the country in the dark for some days. As such, contingency plans have been put in place to ensure that developed people have access to basic services. To know more of this, we have the following story.
Venezuela faced two more power attacks over the weekend. The first occurred on Saturday at 7 p.m. and then again on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. The power outages have mostly affected the water system, as well as people's ability to purchase and store food. As authorities move to implement contingency plans to safeguard transport for citizens, people have started to prepare themselves for more attacks.
I think the contingency plans have been working well.
We need to charge our phones while there is power, to collect water. We have to prepare most food right away or try and keep it frozen.
Members of the opposition held some protests over the weekend. However, citizens are rejecting these actions, as they say this is no way to solve Venezuela's problems. Instead, they are calling for peace.
We have to continue forward in peace, just like we have until now. Looting or calling for violence, that solves nothing.
We are not going to solve any issues by inciting violence on the streets. We are all being affected by these attacks, and we are trying to explain this to people. We are receiving water. A water tank is on its way. We'll remain alert. but we will not succumb to desperation.
Communities have organized to distribute and safeguard water, gas and cleaning supplies in order to contain the issues caused by this emergency.
We pass on messages by word of mouth because phones haven't been working for at least a week. We go to each other's houses to help, and when there is a bigger issue, we all get together to solve it as a community.
Community councils work in tandem with everyday citizens, hand in hand, in order to fulfill any needs the people may have.
Since March 7th, Venezuelans have been facing the consequences of this unconventional war as the country's power plants are being sabotaged.
And Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel has taken to the social media to demand an end to the attacks against the Bolivarian nation. On Twitter, he wrote, "Peace and tranquility for the Bolivarian people. Threats, sanctions, interventions, and sabotage against Venezuela needs to stop." He used the hashtag Hands Off Venezuela and Bolivarian Revolution. And now we move to Colombia, where the National Social Minga for Life has suspended talks with the government in the department of Valle de Cauca because of a lack of guarantees. Demonstrators maintain a permanent assembly in order to find a solution to the negativity of President Iván Duque's government. Protesters continue to blockade some routes in the area. The leaders of the Social Minga claim that the funding assigned to indigenous communities is insufficient to meet their health and education needs. The Colombian National Indigenous Organization announced the decision to call a halt to talks on social media. They said that discussions cannot continue without a guarantee against the stigmatization, accusations, and persecution of the Social Minga. To know and to understand better what is going on with the Social Minga, our correspondent in Colombia, Tatiana Portela, has the details for us in the following report. Welcome, Tatiana.
Colombian indigenous people are continuing protest action in the Cauca department. Protesters consist of campesinos and Afro-descendants who are demanding that the government respect their rights and fulfill the 1991 agreement. There are about 1,400 accords between the government and the communities agreed to since that time. 2 days ago, a negotiation table started between the Interior Minister and indigenous people. But on Sunday, the natives decided to cease talks since they felt that the government didn't guarantee their right to mobilize. The indigenous people also denounced the manner in which protesters were treated since the army was sent in to repress demonstrators. The protesters say they will not stop until the government commits to fulfilling their agreements.
Thank you, Tatiana. And the Uruguayan president has dismissed the defense minister and the head of the army over their action in human rights case. Tabaré Vázquez took the decision after it became public that they knew about the guilt of a man sentenced for the disappearance of a guerrilla during the dictatorship, but didn't tell the court. The officer convicted, José Gavazo, confessed that he threw the body of Roberto Comenroso into a river. Comenroso was part of the Tupamaro movement and was arrested in March 1973, and his body was found days later in a river. To have an update of this decision, we have a report from our correspondent in Uruguay, Mateo Grille. Welcome, Mateo.
After the daily minister cabinet meeting was finished, the Uruguayan president Tabaré Vázquez announced he was dismissing all the top military command from their positions, including the defense minister Jorge Menéndez, the vice minister Daniel Montiel, the commander-in-chief of the army José González, and chief of staff Alfredo Ramón. This followed an investigation by the Uruguayan newspaper El Observador, which published the results of the so-called Honor Court, which evaluated the behavior of former military personnel but did not send the results to the judicial court. The behavior evaluated included the confession of the officer José Gavazo, in which he recognized that he had thrown the body of the guerrilla Roberto Comensoro into a river after he was killed. The Honor Court hid that information, so the president decided to sack the top officials of the defense minister and the armed forces themselves. It is not yet known who will replace them.
Thank you, Mateo. And tied up and hanging from a pole, activists in Sao Paulo are reenacting a popular torture method during Brazil's military dictatorship in protest for President Jair Bolsonaro's order to commemorate that period. Activists are showcasing the different torture methods that were used during the 1964 and 1985 dictatorship. This comes just a day after thousands of Brazilians rallied across the country against presidential order to celebrate the anniversary of the coup d'état that started over 2 decades of military rule.
There will always be groups that support this period, but we believe that most people who know what happened, who know historical facts, think this talk is divisive, especially at a moment in which the president has to be uniting the country over more important issues, which we need to take on.
And the president of the Ecuadorian parliament is to be investigated for allegedly blocking a corruption probe into the president. This after an audio was leaked last month. The administration committee of the National Assembly set up a commission to start investigating Elizabeth Cabezas. In the recording, she is heard talking to the Interior Minister about the debate in Parliament to investigate President Lenin Moreno over alleged corruption cases. Time for a first break here from the South. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. Stay with us. And at least 18 migrants are dead after their boat capsized in the waters of Turks and Caicos. 14 survivors were rescued during a search operation which began on Sunday. After the U.S. Coast Guard was alerted about the tragic incident, the search continues and at least 4 bodies are still missing. And Guyana is working to implement measures to end child labor and is urging the public to report cases of children being employed. The Labor Department will be launching a national child labor policy in April and will enforce drastic measures for those persons who employ children. The chief labor officer says there have been 3 reported cases in 2019, which are being followed up. The Labor Department has also reached out to several communities to ensure that those caught employing children will be prosecuted. In Trinidad and Tobago, the tenacity and resolve of spiritual shooter Baptists is their struggle for freedom was celebrated on Spiritual Shooter Baptist Liberation Day. The public holiday was observed on March 30th in the Twin Island Republic, the only country in the world to do so. Members of the religion fought hard for the right to practice their religion without fear of imprisonment. The day commemorates the repeal of 1917 ordinance which prohibited the very local worship practices of the religious group. And indigenous Maya communities in Guatemala are condemning the contribution of a wastewater treatment plant in Atitlan Lake. They believe that this project is an excuse to privatize and sell water for industrial purposes. Let's find out more on the following story.
The Sutujil people, who are the ancestral heirs of the Atitlan Lake, located in the Solola department, reject the construction of a wastewater treatment plant, which would cost millions of dollars.
We, as a community, have raised our voices to say that water is sacred and it is not merchandise.
This joint public-private venture includes the installation of pipes at about 40 meters deep in the lake to collect water, purify it, and then sell it to be used for irrigating monoculture crops.
In theory, the plan is okay because it proposes cleaning up wastewater. However, in reality, the plan is an excuse to generate profits because what they are proposing is to sell the lake's water.
The budget for this venture is set at more than $215 million, and the communities would be forced to fund a percentage of this. They say this wouldn't solve the issue of pollution they face.
We know that our lake is being polluted, but where does all that pollution come from? It comes from all the businessmen who use fertilizers and plastics, things that we have never used.
According to the Sutujile people, a realistic proposal to clean the lake would be going back to their ancestral traditions.
We have asked people to go back to traditional agriculture. With techniques like permaculture, agroecology, biodynamic, we should start cleaning the lake using those strategies.
They have told us that the lake is dying, but that's a lie because the lake is alive and can clean itself.
Guatemala is currently on its electoral campaign period for general elections that will take place on the 16th of June. But most of the mayoral candidates have chosen to ignore discussions about pollution in the Atitlan Lake.
Santiago Botón, Telesur, San Pedro, La Laguna, Solola, Guatemala.
And now we go beyond our frontiers because survivors of the Cyclone Idai are trying to restore their life through daily routines in Beira, Mozambique. Families are seen searching for a sense of normality in camps by doing different chores. The aftermath of the cyclone has seen the outbreak of cholera and entire villages left submerged, leaving about 1.85 million people displaced. The natural disaster killed over 700 people across Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. This week, Cuban doctors set up the hospital the country sent. And an area of over 22 hectares has been disinfected so far of a cholera outbreak in Beira by Chinese aid workers. Issues of food and drinking water have been solved in the shelter. However, epidemic prevention has remained a big challenge due to overcrowding in camps. And the Algerian president is set to step down by April 28th before his mandate expires, according to state media. Abdelaziz Bouteflika said before resigning that he will ensure continuity of the state's institution. On Sunday, he announced that a new cabinet of 27 ministers would run for the country until a new president was elected, including well-known politicians, political figures, and newcomers. Citizens in Algeria have said the new government is far from satisfying their demands, as they believe that the new government is not different from the previous one. Weeks of protests have been ongoing in the country, calling on the president to step down.
We want them to go. Leave us. We do not need you, either to judge or to put in place a new government. Why is it their choice? They live and leave their children. What does it mean? That the system is always the same.
Time for a second and very short break. More news when we are back. Stay tuned. Insecurity remains in the north of the Democratic Republic of Congo, especially in the municipality of Kivu and in the capital of the province, Goma.
He ran into bandits armed with machetes and spikes. They attacked him and killed him.
He was the acting president.
He was coming from a funeral. Why did he get killed? I mean, they are trying to kill the whole family.
There are Hutu Congolese families expelled from Lubero, landless farmers who have to rent rooms or live with host families.
We are the victims of the people they killed in Lubero. Before he got killed, he said at the funeral that he would keep defending his cause.
They camped outside the headquarters of the provincial government to demand their rights. They want to know if this is going to stop or if it will continue.
There were over 20 people killed in Goma last month. It was worse during the war, but insecurity is still blocking the future. People are crying out for peace. Civil society and social movements are urging the government to guarantee the dignity of the police and soldiers.
There are places where 3 police officers have just one weapon. Many of them are just working as guards.
After 7 in the evening, you can't even walk the streets. You're scared, even of the police and the army. We ask the government to give the police what they need to do their job.
As a sign of the changes going on, the demonstration gets through the barrier and delivers its message to the governor. They want training and decent pay for the security forces.
People continue dying.
You don't look at the mouth of someone who's crying.
The governor promises to pass on their message. He says that everyone should participate in building peace and justice. A new dynamic is needed at all levels, local, national, regional, and international. The people want to play their part and take responsibility in the face of the great challenges of building peace.
And residents of the Guaido and Ruseke villages in Rwanda are still working to heal their wounds 25 years after the genocide, and the water stream that separates them has become a key tool in the process. The neighboring villages are going to peacefully share the stream they used before the genocide. But the horror of the mass killing, which saw 800,000 people, mostly Tutsis, killed in 100 days, continues to haunt them. Children were the first to gather together at the water, followed by adults, even though the painful memories persist.
For someone to admit to the crimes he committed only to the authorities without returning to ask for forgiveness from his victims, do you think that is enough? It's far from enough.
Asking for forgiveness was not easy at all. The first time we crossed to ask for forgiveness, there were around 100 of us. Amongst us, people were scared.
Iran said the attitude surrounding the Arab summit held in Tunis was positive. The spokesman from the Iranian representative applauded the part of the communique supporting Syria's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Iran said the Arab movement's support for Syria's territorial integrity was a positive step against the United States' attempt to legalize Israel's occupation of the area. Meanwhile, the Palestine Liberation Organization thanked the Arab summit for its support, in particular financial assistance that it says will help Palestine overcome political and financial blackmail from the U.S. and Israel. And United Kingdom, because British MPs have voted against the 4 possible alternative plans for Brexit. This comes after they also rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's deal for the European Union for 3 times. None of the 4 proposals, including a custom unions and a Norway-style arrangement, gained a majority. The European Union has called for an emergency summit for April 10th.
This House has continuously rejected leaving without a deal, just as it has rejected not leaving at all. Therefore, the only option is to find a way through which allows the UK to leave with a deal. The government continues to believe that the best course of action is to do so as soon as possible. If the House were to agree a deal this week, it may still be possible to avoid holding European parliamentary elections.
And about 30 firefighters have been killed by wildfires in southwest China. Nearly 700 men were deployed to put out the blaze which broke out in the forest of the Sichuan province on Saturday, I must say. However, on Sunday, 30 fire officers went missing. Reports say a change in the wind direction caused a fireball which trapped the men. Their bodies were retrieved on Monday. And at least 30 people have been killed and hundreds more injured as a violent thunderstorm swept through southern Nepal. A strong rainstorm was swept through western Nepal, destroying homes. Many of those killed were asleep on Sunday night when powerful winds sent deadly debris flying through the air. Officials said Bara district near the Indian border sustained the most damage and casualties. Northern Thailand faced the most serious smog crisis in the country's history on Saturday. Residents were advised to stay inside air-conditioned buildings and avoid outdoor activities and wear face masks if they had to go outside. The level of pollution in the most part of the Chiang Mai continuously remains over the world's safe limit of 50 microns, posing a serious health risk. Thailand's Prime Minister plans to visit the city on Tuesday. South Korea has made arrangements to repatriate remains of Chinese soldiers killed in the Korean War. South Korean military wrapped out remains of Chinese soldiers from repatriation to China. The South Korean military said they dug up the remains from March to November in 2018 and found the remains of 10 Chinese soldiers. The coffins carrying the remains are scheduled to be returned to China on Wednesday. The Korean War started on June 25, 1950 and ended in July 1953. And the French government has promised concrete measures following the great national debate launched by President Emmanuel Macron to try to solve the crisis generated by yellow vest protests. As part of the debate, meetings were held at the local and regional levels and proposals were collected in majors' offices and online. However, according to several surveys, a majority of the French people believe that the initiative won't yield results and will not be able to respond to the real needs of the people. Like this, we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many more information on our website, terrestrialenglish.net, where you can find opinion articles, special interviews, and many more material produced by our informative house. Continue with Telesur, connecting the global south. Until next time, thank you for watching.